Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning is an incredible game changer. Her name is Dr. Hadiyah-Nicole Green. She's one of the first African-American women in the nation to earn a PhD in physics. She also holds the distinction of being the only and the second African-American woman and the fourth African-American to receive a PhD in physics from the University of Alabama. We welcome her to the OPT Network to talk about all of the strides that she has made in helping to find a cure for cancer. Dr. Green, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Carlette. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
It's a pleasure to have you. And I really want to start from the beginning. In being a little girl in St. Louis, Missouri, and your life really changing at about 4 years old. Tell us about it.
So when I was 18 months, my biological mother passed away. I didn't know my biological father, but my grandparents took my two brothers and I in when I was 18 months. And they had us until they both passed in the same year when I was 4. Of natural causes, they were senior citizens and, heart attack and a stroke. They both passed in the same year, which is common for older couples. And then my aunt, my mother's sister, and her husband, my uncle, they took my brothers and I in, and they raised us from the time I was 4 years old.
And so as a little girl, as you're growing up, how do you begin to process not really knowing your mother and then maybe connecting to your grandparents and then having another change in life? How does that affect who you really are and who you become?
So part of it, when I was really little, I didn't know what was going on. And it wasn't something that I was able to fully process until I started going to school. And I started asking, why am I the only little girl in school with no mommy? Like, why me? And that it seemed unfair when I was a little girl that I didn't have parents. But my aunt and uncle, they tried their best to provide that loving, nurturing support system. And my brothers were really the rock because they were consistent with me through every household. And they tried to embrace learning and making learning fun, and they engaged me. And we were a team. We were close. We were very, very close. And so they were the rock that made everything have a sense of normalcy for me growing up.
And so was there a time as you're growing up, Dr. Green, that you realized that there's something very brilliant about your mind?
I don't know that I thought that, because most of the people in my family are really, really smart. They just didn't have the opportunities to go to college. And my brother started having me do his 4th grade homework when I was in kindergarten. And he got such a kick out of how fast I could learn the information. And I remember him putting me on display in front of his friends saying, spell encyclopedia. And I would rattle it off. And then he would give me a math problem and I would do it. And we used to work through those highlight books. And he made learning so fun for me. So it wasn't something that I conceptualized that I was smarter than anyone else. It was just something that he celebrated, and it continued on to me becoming the first in my family to attend college on a full academic scholarship to go to Alabama A&M University.
Wow. And so when you're the first, so your brother celebrates you, and that probably makes you want to become even smarter. But now you're the first in your family, first gen, to go to college. How do you begin to process that, and what kind of weight is that?
So the expectation from when I was young was that because I needed to bring in good grades, but there was never a punishment or a reward for making grades. It was just that was expected. And it was there was always the encouragement to stay in school as long as you can, go as far as you can. You have a bright future ahead of you. And And I remember growing up, my aunt used to tell me to not speak in the same way that the rest of my family spoke, to sound like I was getting an education so that I could be someone. And my aunt who raised me, she had a third grade education, and my uncle had a 12th grade education. And my aunt was a homekeeper, my uncle was a truck driver for Coca-Cola. And in that day, he made excellent money as a truck driver. So I don't have this type of story where we were hungry or the lights were cut off. It wasn't that. But my struggle came from not having that immediate nucleus. And going off to college gave me an environment where I can see other African Americans who were high achievers, who came on full academic scholarship. I was in the honors program, and I saw other first generation college students who were in the same situation. And we created a community, and the leadership at Alabama A&M University, they put me in leadership training and actually founded the Greater St. Louis Student Association my first year at Alabama A&M, and went on to lead a lot of community service initiatives, and ended up being voted by my peers to be Miss Alabama A&M University. And it was such a huge honor, but I didn't process that I was set apart. It was, this is how I serve. And I treat people how I want to be treated. My aunt instilled certain values and principles in me so that it wasn't about being in the mirror and you're better than. Because she was the housekeeper and the homemaker, she told me, you treat everybody. It doesn't matter how much money they make, where they come from, what their background is. These are still children of God. And everybody deserves respect and love. And if you see something and you can do something about it, do it.
And so does she then give you the empowerment, only having a third grade education, that you should go on and you should get as much education and go as far as you can? Is she the driving force or one of the driving forces?
Absolutely. That was a constant record that she would repeat that over and over to me. Make sure you stay in school, get your good grades, and go as far as you can. Like, that was her. She was absolutely a champion for that. And my uncle would say, I make sure that I take you to school every day because I expect you to be great. And, when I would face challenges, he would say things like, this is nothing for a stepper like you. You can do it.
A stepper like you. I love it.
And so it was that expectation that I could go forth and do things that they couldn't do because of the limitations that were placed on them by society. They wanted to see me do better because they saw the door open. And going off to college was symbolic, not just for me, but for my entire family. Because even though I'm the first, I have a whole slew of cousins now who have gone after me.
And they saw the possibility.
Yes, they saw the possibility that it doesn't matter where you come from. And where you come from doesn't dictate and determine where you're going.
Absolutely. Let's do this, Dr. Green. Let me get a break here. But when we come back, I want to talk about how the next part of your life in college begins to shape itself and how science and math become the core for what will ultimately be some of the great things that you're doing in the world. Stay on point, everybody. We're back with more of Dr. Hadiyah-Nicole Green's story right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. It is our great pleasure and honor to share this profile with you because Dr. Hadiyah-Nicole Green is really making a difference in the world. And a lot of people, Dr. Green, don't even know about the difference that you're making in the world. But before we get to your difference making, I want to talk about why physics and how does physics get on your radar?
Okay, that's a great question. So I went to college, and literally first semester, freshman year, I changed my major 4 times.
Wow. And that's normal. That's very normal.
So at 18, I had no idea that I would be doing the work that I'm doing now. But I started off as a computer science major and then changed to math and then electrical engineering and then physics. And the conversation that changed me into a physics major happened as I was coming out of this calculus class. And this lady named Aisha Fields, who was working on her PhD in physics at the time, she said, "Who are you? I haven't seen you before." And I tell her, she was like, "You're a freshman?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "You must be really smart to take calculus as the freshman." And I said, "Oh, I don't know about smart. I have really good study habits. I'm able to focus for a really long time. And so, I like math, and I took AP calculus in high school. I didn't get we actually couldn't afford to pay for the AP courses to get the credit for them. So I'm just repeating the class now."
Wow.
And she was like, "So what do you want to do when you grow up? Or what do you want to do for your career?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not sure, but I really want to help people. I have a strong background in math, but I'm not sure." And so I told her about all the majors that I had at that point. And she was like, "If you can handle calculus as a freshman, then you can do physics." And I'm thinking, "You're crazy. Everybody knows physics is hard." And she said, "Who told you that?" "Probably people who couldn't or wouldn't excel in calculus as a freshman. Just because something is hard for them doesn't mean it's going to be hard for you." And that was a very valuable lesson that she told me about allowing other people's limitations to be placed on me and adopting them as my truth. So until that conversation, I was convinced that physics was hard and that it was something that only white men could do because they were smart and I wasn't. And when I saw her getting her PhD in physics and she was encouraging me in that moment, I was like, you know what? If she can do it, I can do it. And that's one of the messages that I like to communicate when I speak to young people. If I can do it, you can do it. And don't let anyone tell you what's not possible. It might not be possible for that person, but that doesn't mean it's not possible for you. You don't know what limitations you have until you try. And even if it's hard, it doesn't mean it's impossible. So I actually went on to graduate with a 4.0 in physics.
Oh, wow.
And
did you adapt it? Were you able to embrace at that moment, what she told you and know that this is some divine spiritual experience that I just had with this lady that I don't even know?
Not at that point. The divine connection to that moment happened years later. No, actually, yeah, well, maybe about a year or two later when, well, it was years later because I graduated 4 years after that. And the summer after I graduated, like literally the day after I graduated, and that summer was when I found out that my aunt who raised me was diagnosed with cancer. And she said that she would rather die than experience the side effects of chemotherapy and radiation. And I was her primary caregiver. But going back to that conversation, because Aisha Fields had internships and scholarships, I started seeking out internships. So the summer after that conversation, freshman year, I interned at NASA. I learned all about using satellites to communicate with the International Space Station and how powerful satellites were that could see whether a dime on the ground is face up or face down. I then the next 2 summers interned at the University of Rochester Institute of Optics. And following in Aisha's footsteps, I was working in the laboratory for 2 or 3 years at Alabama A&M University, getting experience in fiber optics with lasers. So it was the culmination of all of that experience when I graduated with this 4.0 in physics and these internships and these hours of research in the lab, that when my aunt got diagnosed and she said that she didn't want to experience the side effects of chemo and radiation, I'm thinking, cell phones are so powerful, satellites are so powerful, but we're in the dark ages when it comes to treating cancer. Why, if she has a tumor, and it's what she referred to it as woman's cancer, which is anywhere below your belly button, she wasn't specific because she was old school. She was born in 1932, so she didn't give details.
Right.
But it didn't make sense to me why cancer in that region of her body a treatment for cancer in that region of her body would cause her hair to fall out, would cause her to have nausea would cause her to have all these side effects. As a physicist, it seemed like you could treat the tumors locally. So when I had the idea, the details of it opened up like a flower, and I could just see it. And that's when I connected all of the divine steps that happened that led up to that point. The love of mathematics that my brother gave me, the love of physics that Aisha Fields gave me, and the internships that I had, and the experience and the know-how, because I sat down and sketched out the entire medical device that we call a cancer treatment, but it's a medical device, according to the FDA, that uses lasers to activate really tiny particles called nanoparticles, and it provides a very local treatment to the tumor. And I sketched it out in a few minutes, and it took me a few years to make the prototype and show that it works in mice, but the idea came in an instant, and it was revealed, and that was the part that had the divine connection.
So when you get this picture, you're talking with your aunt and you're taking care of her, and you really understand a lot about physics and how it works. What do you start to think when you're sketching out this thing that would ultimately change the way that we look at cancer? What were you thinking at that moment? Were you thinking that this could be something that could change the lives of millions of people?
No, honestly, I was thinking, I wish I could save my aunt. And when I realized that I wouldn't have time to, I didn't want anyone to suffer the way she did. And I didn't want families to continue to lose their matriarchs and their patriarchs the way that I did. Because I knew with losing her, Christmas would never be the same. Mother's Day would never be the same. I'm sorry. I usually keep my composure during these interviews, I don't have a napkin.
That's okay. And let me just say this while you're gaining your composure, is that many families and many people that are watching this, we all get it, because in a lot of our families, cancer meant death.
Yes.
But God put you in the right places at the right time to give you not only the brilliance of mind, but to give you technology so that now when we look at cancer, we won't necessarily have to look at it as a death sentence. Let me get a quick break here, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the technology, but most importantly, we're going to talk about your foundation and how you are working every single day to be the change that you want to see. Stay on point. We're back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning is Dr. Hadiyah-Nicole Green, and we're just chronicling her life, but also the main portion of this story is how God can use people to make a difference in the lives of others, even when we can't save the ones that we've loved. And so before we went to break, Dr. Green, you were talking about not knowing that you wouldn't be able to save your aunt, but knowing that this technology, laser activated nanotherapy, could be a difference maker. Explain to us in layman's terms what this means and what this will mean to the future of cancer.
So in context, I have to take a moment and talk about the 3 months of watching my aunt suffer as cancer literally ate her from the inside out. And our family was able to come together. She wanted to die on her own terms. She said that she lived a good life. She was ready to go home and be with the Father. So I could respect and appreciate her journey as a Christian woman saying her time is done and she did what she was supposed to do. The part that
Had you become a doctor before she died?
I had just finished undergrad.
Did she knew you were aspiring to become a doctor?
Yes, I had gotten a full scholarship for 4 years to pursue a PhD. And so it was a 4 or 5 year, it was $100,000 scholarship from the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And she knew that. She said that she got to see me graduate from college. I was the first in the family, and then I was on my way. Her work was done. And so that gave everyone a sense of peace that she was ready. My uncle, on the other hand, 3 months after my aunt passed, my uncle who raised me was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. He opted in for chemo and radiation. With those interventions, the doctors told him that it would still only give him 4 to 6 months to live. And I literally prayed him back to life. The doctor said the chemo and radiation did not do that. They were like, they've never seen this kind of recovery. It was a miracle because his cancer was so advanced. And so he actually went on to live another 10 years or so and died from the side effects and complications of the chemo and radiation treatments.
He lived another 10 years?
Yes. So he was able to see me finish my PhD. And he flew on a plane for the very first time because he wasn't strong enough to make the road trip from St. Louis to Alabama. And he came down to my PhD graduation at University of Alabama at Birmingham. And in that interim is when I was in the laboratory making the prototype to show that this idea that was given to me, divinely given to me, that this idea could eliminate cancer in mice after one treatment over the course of 15 days with no observed side effects.
Amazing.
That was the vision, to bring forth a cancer treatment without side effects. That wasn't the extensive burden on the body that I saw my uncle go through. I saw my uncle lose all of his hair, his eyelashes, his eyebrows. His skin looked like it had been barbecued and burnt. He had horrible nausea. His digestive tract was completely out of whack with incontinence, and every imaginable function, it seemed, was breaking down. And seeing this as both of their primary caregivers, my aunt, and seeing the horrors of cancer, and with my uncle seeing the horrors of cancer treatment, when I went into the lab at University of Alabama at Birmingham, I was on a singular mission to design a cancer treatment without side effects that could deliver a local therapy to just the site of the tumor, using my background in physics and lasers, not the biology and the chemistry that's the science behind the drugs that the pharmaceutical industry uses.
So tell me what that does before you tell me about the rest. Tell me what that does for your faith when you know that you've been given this divine idea. How does your faith grow, especially after you've prayed your uncle back and you really are seeing God in the mix?
So the funny part about that, my life in graduate school consisted mostly of 20-hour days. I went to the lab, the gym, and church. I missed birthdays, holidays, weddings, funerals, because I had to focus. Even though I had the divine clarity of how exactly this was going to work, I had racism that is ugly to talk about in the academic setting. And I was told that I had viable lawsuits, and if I filed them, I would never graduate. Let it go. And I hope that young people who come behind me don't have to have those type of obstacles, because the academic rigor was not the challenge for me. It was the racism and the people who didn't want to see me do this because they have been working and trying to find a cure for cancer for their entire 30-year career. And who do you think you are, a little Black girl coming in here as a graduate student talking about you can eliminate tumors in 15 days after one treatment? This will never see the light of day. I had people trying to block me from graduating. And there was one professor who found out about what I was doing. He said, add me to your committee. So in graduate school, you have a dissertation committee of between 3 and 5 or 6 people. Said, add me to your committee. Ended up having a larger committee, but he got in the room. He told me to step out and close the door. And I heard him tell them choice words about how not only did I develop this first treatment, but I actually developed a second treatment, and they still didn't want to let me graduate. And he was saying, in what world do you have a graduate student developing these type of technologies and we don't support her? She needs to walk this May, period. And he said some other choice words, and that was like the ram in the bush. Because, and one of my cousins, Kelly, she would tell me, if this was so easy, you might take credit that you did it. Right. And I'm like, right. I know this was the work of God because I couldn't do it by myself. I needed that intervention for me to always be careful to give God the glory, because it was never about me. I'm just the vessel and a vehicle on a divine assignment. And so even after I developed the technology and it's completely working, I started off on the same journey that most scientists start off on, trying to get funding from investors. And everyone said it was all about the money for them. And I said, I don't want this to be just about the money. This has to be affordable and accessible to poor people. Otherwise, it's like I'm forgetting where I came from. As the first in my family to go to college, how would I look to develop a technology that could save lives and my own family wouldn't be able to afford it? And so because of that, I started a nonprofit.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought.
Okay.
We're going to take a break here, but when we come back, we're going to talk about that nonprofit, the Ora Lee Smith Foundation. Stay on point. We're back after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This is such an incredible story. I hope, Dr. Green, that they make a movie about it, because this is the stuff that you can't even imagine really happening to someone in their life. And the fact that you were able to persevere and that your faith grows. And so, but you had people that were really believing with you and for you and praying that God would give you the strength. Talk about that.
So when I was in graduate school, working these long hours and going from the lab to the gym, home, and the church, I had a Sunday school class at 6th Avenue Baptist Church. And the women in that class and the Sunday school teacher, they would pray for me and pray over me and lay hands on me and encourage me not to give up. And Miss Shirley and Miss Val, I thanked them because they would love on me and build me back up when I would get beat down. And they just poured so much because of how and who they were. And I appreciate them like angels that came to camp out with me during that part of the journey.
Did you wonder if you would make it through? If all of these forces that were coming against you and people saying, who do you think you are? You haven't served your time. You haven't been on this mission for 20 or 30 years. Did you think, am I going to be able to persevere?
So part of it, my brother puts it this way: the world has no idea how stubborn you are. And so it was one of those things where I was like, I literally have nothing else in life to do. So here we are. My feet got dug in the sand, in the ground, so to speak. And I put on that I shall not be moved armor. And I was just like, you know what? I don't know how long it will take, but eventually this too shall pass. And I knew it was going to come to pass. I did not think it would take 7 years, especially when I had developed the technology in the first 3-4 years.
Wow. But you start to know that God is with you and that this is something that the world needs. So how does it then come to fruition?
So, and part of it coming to fruition, I feel like it still hasn't. So the earning of my PhD in physics was just a milestone. Until we start treating humans, to me, it hasn't come to fruition yet. So I was in the process of trying to identify investors, and I was talking to mentors and other scientists who developed technology and started a startup company and got funding. The investors that I spoke with all said they were not concerned about making the treatment affordable. And so I said, where am I going to come up with the $100 million I need to take this through all 3 phases of clinical trials and FDA approval, which is the average cost of taking any drug or medical device from the laboratory all the way into the hospitals where insurance companies can cover it. And then I started thinking about, you know who raises this kind of money? Cancer nonprofits. We see Pink everywhere. We see some of these other large cancer nonprofits. They raise over $1 billion a year.
Yes.
And I said, you know what? If they can do it, I can do it. And I didn't know how. I had a mentor from Alabama A&M University who said, you have the credentials. You can start your own nonprofit. You can figure it out. And she gave me some of her, a template that she used to start one locally in Huntsville. And I followed that and got an attorney and started pursuing the process and established a nonprofit, just like any of the other cancer awareness nonprofits, and said, instead of raising awareness and just promising hope, we're starting with the technology.
Wow.
And saying, you can get a tax write-off to help us move this technology out of the laboratory and into humans. So I named the foundation after my late aunt who raised me, Ora Lee Smith, and established the Ora Lee Smith Cancer Research Foundation, where our singular mission is to translate this treatment that I developed that completely eliminates tumors in mice after one treatment with no observed side effects over the course of 15 days. Our mission is to take that treatment out of the laboratory and move it into humans. And the money that we raise goes directly towards paying for the cost of clinical trials and FDA approval.
Wow. What would your aunt be saying about you right now, Dr. Green? What would she be saying?
I think she would say, like, keep up the good work, that she never would have thought that her name would have been memorialized because she didn't go to college and because she wasn't in the elite part of society. And who is she, this little girl from Arkansas, to have a national, international foundation named after her? And for me, because she was the matriarch in our family, because she made sacrifices to raise me as her own and love me as her own, that this was my way to pay homage and honor her by naming the foundation after her.
That's amazing. So tell people Dr. Green, how they can connect with you and with your foundation and how they can be a part of this amazing work that you are doing.
Thank you. So everyone can go to our website, auralee.org, and that's ORALEE.org, auralee.org. They can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Dr. Hadiyah Green and at We Are Auralee.
And so where are we in the process? When will this technology be available for all people with tumors?
That's such a good question. I really thought we would have started already by now. The technology is literally finished with the research phase and is sitting on the shelf because we haven't raised the money. We have cancer patients who are being sent home to die because modern current treatments can't help them. They either waited too late or their cancer is non-responsive and they're desperate for help. And they come to us saying, can you do to me what you did to that mouse? Can you save me? And it's heartbreaking because we have the technology, we haven't raised the money. We are just barely at $750,000. And in order to get started, we need to raise the first 10 million.
Well, you know what? We're going to keep talking about it. Dr. Green, we're going to talk about it as much as you can, as much as you have time. And we're going to do our small part to share your research and your work and your heart with as many people as we can. We would love to have you back. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely. May I add one more point, please?
Yes.
So it's important for people to understand that we are not 20 years, 30 years away from starting in humans. Once we raise the first $10 million, we are within 12 to 24 months. I have oncologists lined up to start testing in humans in brain, breast, prostate, skin, colorectal, anal, and pancreatic cancer. They see the technology and they say, this could help my patients now. I forgot to include also head and neck cancers. And they're saying this could help their patients now, and they need it. And they're helping me with the FDA applications. They're helping me outline the protocols for the human studies. And the oncologists and the surgeons are ready to start. We're the first nonprofit in the state of Georgia's technology incubator, the Advanced Technology and Development Center. And they've given us the infrastructure that we need to move forward. Literally, the missing link is the funding. And within raising the first $10 million, we can start within 12 to 24 months. We can start on our first human.
Amazing. Well, we will revisit it and we will continue this conversation until it is ready and available. Dr. Green, thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlotte. It's been a pleasure.
Indeed. Stay on point, everybody. We're back right after this.